Hi guys, it's Road Dog Does Politics here with another stream for you all. I hope you're all doing well. Today's stream. Oh shit! Sorry, I forgot to mute my other video. Sorry. Yeah. So, today's stream, I wanted to sort of talk about the issues still going on with the Windrush scandal. It seems to have gone on for nearly a week or more now, and it's still pretty appalling seeing the revelations as to how people from the Commonwealth countries and from the Windrush generation have been treated by successive governments, not just the Tories, but I would say that this is largely a policy that has been revealed to be um, delivered by the Conservative Party, the hostile environment deliberately set up to try and create an environment in which it makes it more difficult for. I think the idea was to um, make it less appealing for illegal immigrants to be in the country, but it in effect systematically also created an environment to try and prevent Commonwealth um, citizens, I guess, from becoming national British citizens, which is really just the more you hear about it, the more it becomes just like you can't really believe that it went on for this long, and you just didn't know about it. I mean, like from my perspective, being like a white sort of lower middle class female, um, I hadn't heard about this, and it was news. It was certainly news to me when it came to light. But yeah, it's just that it's sort of not surprising really because um it's just another thing about the government that just it reinforces the view that they are just institutionally racist, and they have members within their party and within parliament for sure that just believe that anyone who is not them are just worthless. Like they don't deserve to be treated with respect. They don't deserve to be treated as if they are citizens of this country. They don't deserve to receive benefits if they're poor, if they're disabled, if they're gay, if they're on benefits, or if they're black, if they're from other countries, you know, just add it to the list of other things that Tories don't like about people who live in this country. It's just I haven't got the words. It's just like you could just I don't know, man. It's hello Cam in the chat. Yeah, it's just appalling. It's just terrible. What's going on, and the debate now is what the Tories are going to do about the situation and how they're going to deal with it, whether or not they're going to offer compensation, some kind of you know money to people who have been through this sort of trauma. And like it's gone on for years. It's not just a one-off thing where people have applied for a passport and it's been rejected. It's just it's treatment as well, just people how people get treated on a daily basis, whether it's getting snubbed or someone like sort of looks down on you and treats you sort of like dirt, or refuses you access to something simply because you're a certain type of person. And it's just like, as I said, institutionalized racism within within the Tory party, and it's been going on for decades. and I just find it completely unacceptable. And it's depressing me actually quite a lot because it's all you ever see in the news. Like these days, it's just one thing after another. If it's not some sort of military intervention in the Middle East, it's like a scandal coming out on home soil with like the Windrush scandal or anti-Semitism within the Labour Party or uh, cuts to the NHS or expenses scandals where MPs are sort of using taxpayer money for their own benefit. And it just comes a point, I think, where you have to take a step back from it all because it is really quite toxic, all of this stuff. And I'm actually not surprised that Swiss is having to take a step back from all of it because I can see that it does get a little bit too much, especially if you're sort of looking at all of this stuff on a daily basis, and it does get quite heated and it does get quite toxic. So I think once in a while you probably do need to sort of turn your back on it and sort of do something else to make it go away, I guess. Jack James in the chat says, I can't say I trust the Conservatives when they say they will compensate people. They'll kick it into the long grass like they usually do. Yeah, I sort of agree. I think as this is getting talked about now, I mean, Amber Rudd was saying that she'd set up like a team of people within the Home Office, and they'd set up a hotline for people to ring. A hotline, yeah, you heard that right. I if it wasn't true, I mean, if it you'd be laughing if it wasn't true. I mean, it's not a joke that I Oh, here's compensation. You've been struggling for most of your life since you arrived with your parents in the 60s, and your parents are probably now dead or very elderly and aren't receiving the NHS treatment that they deserve. And they've worked here all their life. They've got a job and they've paid their taxes and they've really slaved away, no pun intended. And now that you're an adult and you want to apply for a passport or you need ID or you want to get a job or anything like that, oh, we're going to treat you as if you're not a citizen and you haven't lived here and you need all of this information, you need all of these documents just to prove that yes, you have been here and you are who you say you are, but oh god, we've lost some of these landing cards and it's not our fault, but you have to provide 4 pieces of different evidence for every year that you've been here. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ. It's just an insult. It's an absolute insult to people who have literally, like, they don't know any other country other than this one. It's where they've grew up in. I get the feeling that a lot of these MPs and ministers just don't have a clue about what it is to live and work and just be a normal person and just know what it is to struggle, to have a struggle and be discriminated against and feel like you're constantly fighting a battle against a state that is hostile towards you. And yet you just have to keep fighting and fighting. It's just an everyday battle. And I don't know what that's like because I am a relatively privileged, well off person. I've never really had to sort of, be like these people who have struggled every day to try and, keep food on the table and keep a roof over their heads. And I'm quite lucky in that regard. So as are a lot of people. But like I just can't stand by and just do nothing and watch as these people who have, as I said, have lived here for all of their lives and they literally know no other country other than Britain, and people in the streets are shouting at them to go home, go back to where they came from, all sorts of racist slurs. It's fucking disgusting. And I feel sometimes when I'm watching TV and they're talking about this stuff, I feel really ashamed to be A white person and B a British person. I just feel ashamed, like really, really ashamed to represent this sort of culture and what it stands for, because I know what it stands for. And even with the Union Jack flag and people getting really patriotic over it, I feel uncomfortable because I know what that flag stands for. If you go back in history and you think about slavery and you think about empire and imperialism and how we as a country have treated other countries, and you know what the Commonwealth is? It's a collection of countries that we had taken over and enslaved and forced people to work for us for pittances. That's basically, in a nutshell, what the Commonwealth is. So just remember that, because it makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't know about anyone else, but yeah. So hi Chamchi and Jack James in the chat who have joined. It's like the world has become 100% more insane recently. I'd agree with that assessment for sure. They will give peanuts, not compensation. Like Swiss, I needed a good month or two after the election to start thinking politics again. It leaves you in despair sometimes. Don't feel ashamed. It's not your personal actions that has resulted in this current circumstance. I know it hasn't. I know it's not me personally, but it's just the fact that I represent a good portion of the population that is thinking these things. So that's probably why I feel a bit ashamed. So yeah, and on to hi angels. The idea of white guilt is nonsense. Don't be ashamed about being white. I know, Cam, I know, but it's just the more racism you are confronted with by people who are of your own race and background, it just makes you feel a bit ashamed to be part of it, if you know what I mean. So I think all we can really do is just to like stick up for like everyone who's being discriminated against whenever you see it, and just fight the good fight with everybody else, and fight for justice in the world. I sound a bit like an SJW now, so but yeah, like the idea of empire and imperialism is it's just not a nice thought. And like I think the best thing that we can at least try and do is just try and make up for it, and make things better, and just treat when like generally in the street in everyday life, like whether you're in a shop or like out and about, just treat people with respect and just be polite and have manners, and like just be a nice, respectful, decent human being. I mean, it's not so hard, is it? I know, like generally you see people, a minority of people in the street and stuff, in everyday life who aren't like that and are just generally bigoted, racist, arrogant individuals who think only of themselves and that think that they're better than everyone else. And oftentimes they're the ones that get into the headlines, which is a massive shame. And I think that's the prevailing attitude of today's media, that this sort of mentality of that I'm better than you, and I don't know, the sort of imperialist attitudes of days gone by is sort of, I wouldn't say re-emerging, but you sort of get a hint of it every now and again, which is a shame, because I don't think that I thought that we as a country, as a nation, were better than that. But ever since Brexit and ever since the election last year, I've sort of been shaken up in my mind, in my viewpoint of we're all essentially decent human beings. So Angel said she'll be lurking for now as she's working and canvassing. Good luck canvassing, Angels. Do I still have man flu? Um, it's one of those colds that sticks around for like a month and just doesn't leave you. I mean, I'm over the worst of it, but I've got a cough that is lingering a little bit. So if I sound a bit croaky and coughy, that's probably why. But thanks for asking. Jack James says, "Yeah, you are right about that. Those who shout the loudest look like the majority. For a while, I thought they were, but don't believe that anymore." Chamchi says, as a society, we have gone from introverted racism to extroverted racism. That. I think that's right, and I think the main, like the right wing media, like I keep repeating this in many of my videos, but the Express and the Sun and the Mail have like they seem to have like gone full on, making apologists for racists basically, and just spewing all this really hateful, disgusting headlines about immigrants and EU EU people from Europe and overseas and people of color and poor people, working class on benefits. Like on I don't know what channel it's on, Benefit Street, and the whole idea of poverty porn. Like, what's that about? Like, let's make fun of poor people because they're misusing their benefits and spending money on widescreen televisions. God's sake, really? Do people like? Where are people's morals? Where have people's standards gone? Like this whole just the distraction politics of today is just um let's let's point the finger at anyone but ourselves because we're going to find a reason to exploit these people. So like working class people, immigrants, Polish people, Romanian people, gay people, black people, Irish people. I mean, like, for God's sake, Jesus Christ, I'm sorry, but like it's tiring me out big time. And like when you try and talk to people about these things, they just seem like look at you with blank stares and like just ignorant statements of, oh well, they're taking our jobs and they're right. I need to calm down, otherwise I'll go into a rant. I think our institutions listen to some of the overt racist and think people such as Brexiters are like that. I mean, yeah, they're definitely pushing that sort of talking point, aren't they? That I think they really love a little bit of dog whistling, and like David Lammy pointed that out, I think last week in the Commons where he stood up and made a speech. I think I showed it in the stream I did last time, where he basically was ranting about how bad the Windrush scandal was and how bad it made us look as a country, and that we'd become a nation of dog whistlers and apologists for far right rhetoric, which is absolutely right. He's right, 100%. And I think I made a point on this on Twitter last night. I was watching a channel 4 stream on YouTube where, well, I think it was the channel 4 news, but they were also streaming it on YouTube, and they had sort of like a small audience of people in a hall, and they were discussing the Windrush scandal, and they were mostly all like black people, and they had Jacob Rees-Mogg was there and David Lammy as well, and then a couple of token white people, and conservatives. And it was the most fantastic piece of investigative journalism. Like I think Channel 4 are really hitting the nail on the head these days when it comes to actually informing people. And I thought this was really because it was hosted by Christian Guru Murphy, I think his name is. He's a fab reporter, an absolute fab reporter. He was like going around people in the audience, and then speaking to them about their experiences. For instance, there was a young woman who um, was not allowed to go to her mother's funeral. I think her mum had died, and was living in Jamaica or some Caribbean island, and she wasn't allowed to and go to her mum's funeral. And like she ended up crying and like really trying to hold back tears because like she wasn't allowed to like get papers or documents to allow her to travel. And then there was another um person, I think, a mother whose son was didn't have any sort of citizenship at all. Like he wasn't allowed to go attend school in his local area in the UK, and was deported. And when they got to the airport in Jamaica, was not allowed past security or customs because they didn't accept him as a Jamaican citizen either. So he was pretty much a stateless individual. And I'm not sure how old he was. He seemed quite young, but he wasn't there. But like, this is what people were having to like go through, and these were real people experiencing real shit like this, and you just got a real insight into like how people were feeling, and I really admire them for like not, you know, standing up and ranting abuse towards people because they're perfectly they're in their rights to, I think. But you know, I think Channel 4 did a really great bit of investigative journalism by doing that program, because they sort of, as well as doing their usual news piece, streamed on YouTube and let other people comment and did various different reports and went to people who were reporting in like Jamaica, etc. So yeah, I think it was great and really commendable reporting. Um so comments. I think I've missed a few of them. Um Controversy sells newspapers. I think our institutions listen to some of the overt racists and think people such as Brexiters are like that. Yes. The ones that give you dirty looks and don't want to talk to you. BBC is right wing and Newsnight is warmonger. Angel says, "Have we had so many horrendous people all along? Because I have never experienced this shit in my life till the last few years." I think the thing is that racism and xenophobia and all of that has always been there, but I think there's always been like a stopper on it. But ever since Brexit and ever since like the Windrush thing and ever since like elections and whatnot, it's sort of been allowed to spill over, and it's become normalized. And with it's such a shame to talk about this. I just keep picturing Boris Johnson just screaming about 350 million for the NHS and taking back control, and then just spewing hatred about sweeping dead Libyans off of the street and um, picking innies with watermelon smiles. And then it's just allowed all this hate crime to just bubble over, and it's sort of given people like it makes people feel like they've got a right to say all this stuff. And like, fine, you can say what you want to say, but just there has to be some level of control, and like there are limits to how far you can go with this sort of abuse, because it is abuse. Let's be fair. Like, it is it's more than just institutionalized racism. It's more than I mean, I don't know if people saw the documentary about Stephen Lawrence the other week on BBC about how the police were institutionally racist and just deliberately not doing things to set the investigation further on. But it's just like it's just allowing people to just be more overtly racist and more overtly xenophobic. And thank God I've never had to experience that sort of stuff. I mean, like, as I've experienced like everyday sexism, like not on a day-to-day basis, but sometimes with like truckers and like people, like males on the street who wolf whistle, etc. And I don't think it's anywhere near as bad. But I think until you've experienced it for yourself, you don't really fully understand what it's like for these people who just have to live through it every single day. And I don't know how they do it. They just put up with it, I guess. I think Jack James says I think some actually just repeat far right talking points without thinking about them. Once you actually talk to them, you actually find out that they don't believe half the stuff the vocal minority like to paint everyone as. Especially the extreme talking points like send them all back on a boat. Adam West says UK governments see people as a number. I'm beginning to think that's true. I think that especially the Conservatives they just don't give a shit. They're just intent on staying in power or in office for as long as possible. And they do anything because they're that low. They're just such low lives. Like a lot of them are just such low lives. I don't know why they're still they're still polling at roughly 40%. I think the most recent of I checked Britain elects the other day and the Westminster voting intention. This is via YouGov. Conservatives are on 43% and Labour on 38% and Lib Dems are on 8%. Which I just want to I just want to bang my head against a brick wall or jump out of a window at this point. Because I don't know why. I don't know why people are still voting for these motherfuckers. I really don't. And this is probably, yeah, it was. This was after the Syrian airstrikes of a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And people still want to vote for these fuckers. I don't know. I don't know. The world is just going to shit. God, I I despair. I absolutely utterly despair. Why are these people still getting voted in? Why? And I've seen a lot of people in YouTube comments. I watched a Jonathan Pye video yesterday, and they were talking about Jeremy Corbyn as, oh, it was better than the alternative. Like I was like, what is the sky gonna fall in? Are we all gonna get abducted by zombies and the earth will turn into some sort of savage wasteland where, will the earth will become populated by flesh-eating worms? Is that what will happen if everyone votes Labour? Because that's how people are like reacting, as if there'll be some sort of terrible viral outbreak of plague if people vote for Jeremy Corbyn. It's so funny. It's like, oh God, I don't want to vote for that. Oh, it's this Conservative government it's bad, but it's Jeremy Corbyn will be worse. It's like, how do you reach that conclusion? Please let me know. Oh, but he'll bankrupt the country, and oh, he'll make friends with Hamas and terrorists in the Middle East, and he wants to unite Palestine and all of this. Oh, where do you get your information from? Please let me know. Oh God, Jesus Lord. Sorry for the profanities, but I am getting really riled up over this. I just can't. I really can't. In fact, there's an interesting poll by Survation, or survey, I should say, that I want to share with you. They published. This is actually quite an interesting survey, actually, and I'll share it with you. It just sort of gives an insight into. It's mostly to do with the reaction to the Syrian airstrikes. But yeah, I just want to go through it with you just for a laugh. Wah! Okay. So here's the Survation poll, and the reason why I chose this really is because they were the polling company that got the election the closest, so I sort of tend to trust them a bit more. So the summary is basically, this is taken from a study of April the 14th from about 2060 people. It says the US, UK, and France launched missile strikes on Syrian government facilities overnight in retaliation for a suspected chemical weapons attack on the town of Douma last Saturday. US President Donald Trump said he had ordered strikes on targets associated with the chemical weapons capabilities of the Syrian government. Do you support or oppose, the launching of military strikes against Syria by the UK? Okay, so we've got 36% who support, 40% who oppose, and 24% who don't know. So it's about the same, but it's the majority is generally that they opposed it. And it goes on, Theresa May had obtained cabinet support for the need to take action in Syria. Which of the following is closer to your view? And we've got 54%, which is the majority, saying that she should have held a parliamentary debate and vote before intervening militarily in Syria, which is the popular consensus. And then 30% said that she shouldn't have. 17% said they don't know. Theresa May did not seek a parliamentary vote before intervening militarily in Syria. Which of the following is closest to your view? 39% say that they trust Theresa May to make the right decision. 43% said that they don't. 17% said they don't know. So largely distrustful of Theresa May, and I don't know if that extends to the rest of the Conservative Party, but there you go. Which of the following do you trust the most to make the right decision regarding Syria? 51% say MPs as a collective, 27% say Theresa May, 22% say they don't know. How well or badly do you think Theresa May has handled the situation in Syria so far? This is a bit of a mixed bag. I don't think there's any full-blown majority, like landslide majority. Most people say 28% don't really have an opinion, neither well nor badly. 24% quite well, 15% quite badly, 7% don't know. So yeah, it's a little bit of an ambiguous sort of don't really care question. And then it goes on, Jeremy Corbyn, how well or badly do you think Jeremy Corbyn has handled the situation in Syria so far? Also, the majority say 31% say neither well nor badly. 5% say very well, 13% say quite well, 16% quite badly, 20% very badly, 14% don't know. So again, not really of an opinion to, say for sure. Which party leader do you trust the most to handle international crises? 46% Theresa May, 25% Jeremy Corbyn, 29% say they don't know. What a surprise! What is it? Can someone in the chat please clarify for me why Jeremy Corbyn is just getting so much like hatred, so much people just moaning about him, saying that he wouldn't do a good job. I mean, do you think it's all down to media smears? Do you think that's the main reason? Is it anti-Semitism as well? Is it a mixture of both of those things? Because I think that largely what the media say about, especially the right-wing media, a lot of it is not really based on hard evidence, and it's just sort of a way to undermine him. So yeah, I don't know. I'm amazed that he puts up with it though. I'm amazed that he doesn't, throw a massive tantrum over it. I mean, he's been quite cool and collected, which I do admire him for. Which party did you trust the most to make decisions on military matters? 46, Theresa May, 26%, Jeremy Corbyn, don't know, 28%. That's pretty much the same as the last question. And then the next question is, you'll probably scream at the result of this one. Which of these prime ministers would you trust the most to handle potential military conflict? Theresa May, 12%. David Cameron, 10%. Gordon Brown, 7%. Tony Blair, 7%. John Major, 5%. Margaret Thatcher, 30%. Yeah, you heard that right. People trust Margaret Thatcher the most on a margin percentage of 30% to handle military conflict. Above everybody else, 28% say that they don't know. I would say the 28% bracket of people are probably the most sensible people. Oh my god, the world's gone mad. It's gone insane. Oh, jump out the nearest window now. It's not going to get better. The next question. Which of the following reasons best describes why you support military action in Syria by the UK? 62%. It is necessary to deter the further use of chemical weapons in Syria. And then 15% say it will help bring down the Assad regime, even though it's been said by Theresa May that main aim wasn't about to bring down the Assad regime. It wasn't about changing the leadership. But there you go, 15% think that it was. It is important to stand together with the US and France, 20%. And then these irrelevant sort of statistics, 2% say they don't own none of them. But I mean, again, this sort of question goes back to we as a country, we just pick and choose when it's the right thing to do. And, there are various incidents and crises happening across the globe that we're choosing not to get involved in because it's not good for us or we're not profiting out of it. And apparently barrel bombing and missiles is fine, but when it comes to chemical weapons, oh no, that's when we have to step in because double standards. It's just appalling. I mean, I wish people who take part in these polls were a bit more clued up about stuff and I mean, to me it just seems like these are very shallow. I mean, when people get asked questions, it's just sort of like just a snap decision without really thinking about what the real facts are or investigating what's really going on. They just take everything at face value, which is irritating. And then, which of the following reasons best describes why you oppose military strikes in Syria by the UK? The risk of more civilian casualties is too great, 34%. I mean, really? Seriously? 28% I genuinely oppose all military action. 31% say fear of retaliation by Russia or others. Yeah. And I think these last, yeah, I won't go to the end. This question is, which of the following do you think is the bigger factor influencing Theresa May's desire to take military action against Syria? 47% say genuine concern for the victims of chemical weapons attacks. I mean, do you think she's genuinely concerned for the victims? Because I don't. I certainly don't think that. And then 38% desire to improve her status as a strong leader on the world stage. 38%. I mean, if she had genuine concerns for victims, she would be doing her utmost to improve conditions for people who live in this country, for people who don't have houses to live in, for people who can't afford food, for people who aren't getting the right enough wages to live on, people who are having to bring up 2, 3, 4 children and, are really struggling to keep roof over their heads. Things like that. But she's not. And so she doesn't have concern. It's just a way, it's just the Tory ideology, I reckon. So yeah, that's more or less the observation survey, which is quite insightful, wouldn't you say? So I've not read the comments, so I'll read some of these comments. Where do I get to? Oh no! Oh, I'm streaming at the same time as JJ. Oh shit, man. Sorry. Please feel free to go to JJ's stream. It's probably way more interesting than mine anyway. Oh my god, I can't find. 4News is good on something, but not on Saudi or Yemen. They don't care about human right or genocide that happens. I mean, yeah, that's probably true, but I think they do a far better job than the BBC does. So that's why I sort of switch over and watch them every once in a while, because I think they do better investigative journalism than other channels, I think. The first 2 weeks after the referendum was pretty bad. I did feel guilty for that. But then when I was happy to see the pushback against people who thought it was acceptable to be violent and abusive. Let's just say if everything about the British establishment is cucks. Angel says, I'm not sure I believe that poll, frankly, and I feel the WIndrush scandal will hit them like a truck too. Look, this government is clearly wholly incompetent with the worst leader ever. I mean, yeah, I'd like to think that. But I thought that with the airstrikes, like I thought that the polls would dramatically shift after the airstrikes, but they've still remained largely the same. And like, if anything, the Tories have gone up by a couple of points, and a margin of people opposed them, and then not many people, like, is it quite balanced? And I am like, what's it going to take? What's it going to take for the Tories to just completely get obliterated? I don't know, and that's the problem. I mean, you think, oh yeah, this is the thing that's going to bring them down, but then when you see that it doesn't, you sort of doubt what the next thing will be. What will it be next? And like, will it be this that takes them out of office? And then it's not, and then you're waiting for the next thing. So I don't know. I don't know what it is. He'll turn us into Stalinist Russia. To stop this, I'm starting to think we need an actual revolution. I don't know about that. Maybe I don't know what that would look like. The system is rigged for Tory and their dirty tricks, and the Tory party has a lot of money. They certainly do, and I don't think that it's. I mean, you've seen. I don't know if you've seen the stuff with like a mobile, and I think that the French wanted to do an investigation to think it was tax fraud. I think it was. And they wanted help from the UK government, but the Tories wouldn't give it to them because Leica Mobile are a major Tory donor. Corruption, people, corruption. It's there. You just need to look it up. Leica Mobile, Tory donors. I'm starting to think that all of our national institutions need dismantling and replacing with something else. Where the establishment make evolutionary change impossible, they make evolutionary change inevitable. That's true, actually. That's probably true. I think it's not. I don't know when it will be, but I think we're sort of reaching a flashpoint where something will happen. I don't know what it will be, but something will happen, and it will dramatically change the way that people think about politics and voting. I'd like to think anyway. Fingers crossed. Hopefully in our lifetimes at the very least. Jack James says it's not really that. For many, it's simply better the devil you know. We've been doing things like military intervention for so long now that some people think that's the only way to get things done. That's sad, isn't it? That's sad that people just sort of get a bit brainwashed into thinking that that's the norm. And it's not, and we can do things differently, but you get it drummed into you so much that you think that's the only way. You're right there, that's for sure. YouGov is Tory run and not representative. Most people on the site are Tory trusting types. I wouldn't touch with a barge pole. Thanks for that, Tory nemesis. I will certainly bear that in mind when I go back next time and take a look at them. Most of the pollsters are owned by the Tories. Neolib want Corbyn gone because he wouldn't sell weapons to Saudis. Damn. It's time to insert the. I know which quote you're talking about, Cam. I know which quote you're talking about. The one about the polls, opinion polls. Actually, on account of Peter Hitchens, I don't know if anyone watched this week, last Thursday after Question Time, where they were talking about the Syrian airstrikes, and Andrew Neil was having a proper smash into him about why he disagreed with going and airstriking in Syria. That we need like pretty much echoing the same sort of rhetoric as Jeremy Corbyn. Like, well, the APCW need to go in and get evidence of who it was and like what sort of chemicals they were, and who did it. I can't remember exactly what. You can always go back and like rewatch the clip, but he just got properly rinsed by Andrew Neil, and I can't remember who. I think Alan Johnson was on the panel as well, but I mean, like there are several things I disagree with when it comes to Peter Hitchens and his like opinions about stuff, but I think largely like with the Syrian airstrikes and like intervention, he's largely anti-intervention, and the most horrible thing is now these days with the BBC that if you disagree or go against the like the agenda or the talking point, then you're like you're hung out to dry. Like how dare you? Oh my goodness, you're a Assad apologist. Why are you saying these things? Like just I'm allowed an opinion. I mean, I'm allowed an opposing opinion, or do I have to agree with every single thing that the government is doing? Is that what we've come to now? That if you even dare stand up against Theresa May and the Tories and disagree or oppose or challenge or try and come up with some form of accountability, oh my God, how dare you? You are a spy, you're a communist, you're a Marxist, you're an apologist. Oh, you're such a liberal lefty snowflake, can't take. Like, what the hell have we come to, man? What the hell have we come to? Speaking of BBC, I don't know if you saw this on my Twitter feed, but I sent a complaint in to the BBC the other day specifically about BBC bias, and I got a reply this morning that I'm going to share with you just because I find it quite amusing. Um, I don't know if you can see this. This is the reply from the BBC that I sent to them regarding specifically bias within right-wing bias within the BBC on programs like Question Time and Newsnight, etc. So I'll just read it out. Thank you for contacting the BBC. I understand you feel BBC News and current affairs programs are politically biased. Impartiality is a core value of the BBC, and one reason why we believe our news coverage is trusted and respected around the world. We apply this principle to our reporting of all issues. BBC News never takes a position on anything that we cover, but we always aim to reflect a broad range of voices on any given subject. The BBC is, of course, independent of any political or commercial interests, and our news agenda would never be influenced by any outside organisation. There may be times when there is a consensus view on an issue which will become apparent in our coverage. This doesn't mean that we are agreeing with it, but simply that we are reflecting the reality of what is happening. By the same token, we wouldn't censor a minority viewpoint, even if some of our audience might find it unpalatable. We are careful to check and report the facts surrounded by any debate, examine relevant arguments, and offer detailed analysis. We believe that by doing this, our audience can then make up their own minds. Due impartiality isn't necessarily always achieved in one single report or program, so we would ask that you take account of how we cover a topic over time. We're sorry if you feel that any aspect of our news coverage displays bias, but I hope the above explains the approach we take to reporting to try and ensure that we always maintain our impartiality. If you're interested, you can read more about the BBC editorial guidelines or on impartiality below. We hope this helps address your concerns and would like to assure you that we value your feedback. So basically, not really acknowledging the problem and denying that they have any sort of bias at all. Thanks, BBC. Yeah, I just thought that was funny. Yeah, it doesn't address what I said in my original email. Adam West, that letter is bullshit. Yeah. It is basically, isn't it? So yeah, it just reinforces my opinion that the BBC just it doesn't properly address people's concerns. I mean, it's not just me that feels like this way about the BBC. It's just constant. Like you can see it obviously on Question Time. It's on Newsnight as well. But people who challenge the popular viewpoint, or just go against the popular conversation, are just smeared, like really unfairly smeared. And I just feel bad. Like Emily Thornberry was on Question Time last week. I don't know if people saw it, but she just got horrendously treated, I feel. And like there were barely any left wingers on the panel, and there was like the only sort of left wing person was a centrist Guardian writer. And every time Emily Thornberry tried to speak, she was interrupted constantly, and then and then when she tried to make points, told that she was interrupting other people and she should wait till people have finished, whilst at the same time being, told not to interrupt people, which was quite unfair. And I don't mind Emily Thornberry. I think she's all right. I think she's more like of a centre left person than what Jeremy Corbyn is. But I just, regardless of who they are, they should be allowed to say what they want to say, like in balance, rather than just getting walked all over and just treated like they don't deserve to have their opinion. Jack James in the chat says David Lammy now fingering Damien Green for refusing to help Windrush case back in 2011. That's a real tweet from Laura Kinsberg. Oh. I see what you mean. Restricted User Made says there is an answer for the BBC. Don't watch their service live and don't pay for their license. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people that say that they're going to retract their BBC or like their TV license and not watch the BBC anymore, which I applaud them for. But like, I'll not watch their like current affairs programs. But I mean, there's still a degree of things on the BBC that I quite like watching. I mean, like their dramas are not that bad. And they do sometimes their comedy is quite good. Like I'll still watch Have I Got News for You because I still think that's funny. And you know Charlie Brooker's stuff as well. So yeah. But yeah. In regard to Jeremy Corbyn, seeing as that is the title of this video, I think there's news today that sorry. There's news today. A Labour MP, Ruth Smeeth, is attending a anti-Semitism hearing and has been escorted by other Labour colleagues for a hearing against Mark Wadsworth. And there are a number of people who want to see strong action over the fact that you know, this whole anti-Semitism within the Labour Party thing is what they're wanting to sort of deal with it as much as possible. I don't know. I think I'll share this this BBC article. There I was just smearing the BBC just now, and now I'm sharing an article from them. Oh, there's my hypocrisy. So yeah, this is I think this is something that Laura Kunsberg was also tweeting about as news this morning. Because obviously this anti-Semitism thing is just so important. And, you know, Labour need to be told about this because it's such a massive issue. Ruth Smeeth escorted by Labour colleagues to anti-Semitism hearing. Labour MP Ruth Smeeth has been escorted by colleagues to a hearing where she will give evidence against a party member accused of anti-Semitism. Mark Wadsworth was suspended from the party after a 2016 incident. He said he was confident of being cleared. Labour has promised to settle the vast majority of the outstanding cases of alleged anti-Semitism by August, after meeting members of the Jewish Leadership Council and the Board of Deputies of British Jews on Tuesday. Jeremy Corbyn said dealing with complaints swiftly and fairly was a top priority for Labour officials, but the Jewish leaders said that the talks had been a disappointing missed opportunity to resolve long-standing problems within the party and did not agree a minimum plan of action. So again, if you're not talking to the right Jews, and you know you're attending meetings with the wrong Jews, quote unquote, and you should be talking to us, and you're not dealing with the situation the way that we want you to. So that's why we're criticizing you. As Mrs. Smeeth entered the building in central London where the hearing is being held, a group of protesters chanted, "Reinstate Mark Wadsworth!" and carried placards in support of him. One of them said that the rows about anti-Semitism, prejudice against Jewish people in Labour had been largely fabricated. Mr. Wadsworth, an activist and anti-racism campaigner, told reporters, "I'm not guilty. If this hearing is based on the facts and it's fair, I will be exonerated." The case is based around events and the launch of Shami Chakrabarty's report into anti-Semitism within Labour in 2016. Pictures. Miss Berger, who was accompanied by Louise Elman, Jess Phillips, Anna Turley, and Margaret Hodge, among others, said what they wanted was strong action, not just warm words. It's been 22 months now. There's a lot of talk about due process, but actually, process has happened. One of the MPs who arrived with Miss Smith described the scenes outside as appalling. The outcome of the hearing, which will decide whether Mr. Wadsworth should be expelled from the party, is not expected until Thursday at the earliest. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I agree that there's anti-Semitism within the Labour Party, but I think that it is being blown out of proportion. It definitely needs to get dealt with, but and I don't know, to be honest, I don't know what more Jeremy Corbyn can do about it. I mean, he's apologized however many, so many times, publicly and privately, and he's met with various different groups of people, different factions of Jews, and tried to sort it out with them, and I don't know. I just think his hands are tied. Like he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't in a lot of cases, and I feel sorry for him. It's he's been extremely principled in the way that he's been dealing with this, and to me, it seems like he's never lashed out at anyone. He's never been, terribly abusive or, stated his opinions like overtly or radically about what he thinks about certain issues. But I just think that he's just constantly getting harangued for. I made a tweet yesterday evening commenting on this. I'll just bring it up. Corbyn is constantly harangued by media sources to do more about crushing anti-Semitism within the Labour Party, but Theresa May is barely challenged when it comes to dealing with obvious and glaring institutionalised racism in the Tory party, which I think is absolutely right. I mean, everyone just balks on about how terrible Jeremy Corbyn is, and how he's like anti-Semitic and communist, a mouthpiece for Russia and friends with Hamas and friends with Putin and a Assad enabler, Putin enabler, and all of this stuff, and just it's very unfair what is going on, and when I was talking about my letter about BBC bias, I think that correlates completely, because a lot of the time Corbyn is just receiving smear after smear after smear, and the BBC are complicit in it, along with a lot of the people who work in the right wing media, like the Mail and the Telegraph, actually work for Downing Street. They're like communications advisors or whatever it is. So they've got a role to play within the government in advising how what the public narrative should be and what the agenda should be, and how the government and the media should treat the opposition. Because I don't think it's fair at all, and I also don't think that the Blairites within the Labour Party are helping in any way. I think that they're doing more harm than good. And I think that Corbyn, in keeping the Blairites on, I think it's more out of wanting to keep the Labour Party together as a broad church rather than just deselecting them, which I think a lot more people are wanting now. Now that that we've got it's been almost a year after the general election, and I think that the Blairites are probably on the warpath again towards Jeremy Corbyn. So yeah, it's just, I think it's sad. I just think because we we can live in a better society. We can afford to fund our NHS properly if we do it in the right way, if we've got a strategy, and if people are prepared to pay more tax. And I don't know how, I'm not a strategist or anything like that, but I think that it is possible to pay people more and to ensure that people are looked after and people receive the right sort of benefits, and people who can't manage receive the right sort of support and safety net, and people with mental health problems and elderly people with dementia, vulnerable people, homeless people. We can as a country we can afford to help them, but we're just choosing not to. The government is choosing as an ideology not to help people because they are discriminatory, they are racist. Fundamentally, this is fundamentally racist, fundamentally and like against or doing as much as possible to make things more difficult for people who work in public services, disabled people, poor people, people on benefits. And it's just completely not acceptable. The path we're taking as a country, as the government is taking us down, I just don't think it's gonna take us anywhere good for the country. And if we vote for Jeremy Corbyn, I think for the most part, at the very least, we will get something good out of it, because what he's promoting is, a better society that works for everyone, as opposed to just the very rich at the top who only work for themselves. And that's why I think. And even if you dislike Jeremy Corbyn, if you don't like his policies, if you really honestly think that he is a communist sympathizer or Marxist, Leninist, Trotskyite, far left, Putin lover, and allotment owning, jam making person, if you think he's all of those things and he ends up getting voted in, then 5 years later you can always vote him out, because that's democracy. And you can, get the Tories back in, God help us. So yeah, I just don't understand what people have, like what problem they've got, just severe problem. Like they honestly believe that if Labour get in under Jeremy Corbyn, then the sky will fall in. And like, are you serious? Would you rather keep having this disgusting, racist, discriminatory Tory party in power and just like let them keep running the country into the ground, rather than vote for like genuine change, positive change? I mean, just look at the manifestos. The Tory party offered nothing to anyone. It was just more of the same, more depressing dementia tax, like universal credit bullshit. So I don't know what else to say, man. It's just the state of politics, the state of the world at the moment is really quite depressing. Um, Adam says Jewish council wants Corbyn to close down the YouTube chat. Okay, good luck to them. Cam says Corbyn has campaigned all of his life against anti-Semitism. Exactly, and that's what's so frustrating. It's just like the media just keep on. They just keep on bashing and just doing as much as they can, to just smear and undermine him. And they're just trying so hard to get more and more people go against him and like all of his principles and policies. And it's just taking away from his like the Labour Party's proper true values and what they actually stand for. And I don't know what else he can say. Like, he's apologized a bunch of times. Like, I don't know what more he can do. They're just a bunch of liars. May is friends with Saudi White Helman. Is that meant to say helmet? It's the intention of the Blairites that will harm Labour. Kick Blair out and bring Galloway back into the Labour Party. Yeah, I've been listening to quite a few of George Galloway's talk radio clips. The most recent one I watched was about the royal baby, which I think is just the biggest non-news story I've ever heard. Oh my God, ring out the bells because a woman has given birth to a child. Hooray. Just another mouth to feed at taxpayers' expense. Fabulous. That's why I didn't really talk about that today. I know it was in the news this week, and it was covered by pretty much every single newspaper. I think like the Daily Mail's front page was a zoomed in picture of the royal baby saying, "Oh look, it's waving! The royal wave." I was like, for really? Fuck's sake, are you fucking real? So yeah, that's my opinion anyway. The biggest non-news story of the week was the royal baby. And like, get a life, people, seriously. People waiting outside the hospital for a week or more. Seriously, get a fucking life. I thought I was bad when I used to wait for Lady Gaga outside hotels, but that takes it to a new level. Tories look after their friends which are rich or put money in their pockets. From what I can see, a big problem is that we seek to punish people with racist thoughts via the victims. That only serves to further polarize society in general. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I definitely think that instead of slapping labels on people for like thinking that they're racist, you actually need to have conversations and like sit down with people and ask them why they're feeling or like the reasons why they think what they're thinking. People don't like change, and it's the devil that you know. Yeah, but I want change. I mean, like, why did we vote for Brexit if people don't like change? That's a question. When Labour gets in, we will have another battle on our hands against the Blairites and the Remainers. Am I a Remainer? I voted Remain. Does that make me a Remainer? I'm still going to stand up for my values, regardless of what people say. Jack James, what I would do is fund anti-hate groups that have ex-racists to talk to these people and show them the traps people fall into. That's a good idea. In the end, it will turn out just fine. I think, to a degree, former racists have a better idea of what a current racist trail of thought is. They can help them find a way out the best. It's funny actually. I don't know if people will have started watching this program, Cunk on Britain. It's like a Charlie Brooker written program on BBC Two, and Philomena Cunk, the presenter, is like, her actual name is Diane Morgan, but she was talking about the race riots during the 60s, and she said something like, oh, because Facebook hadn't been invented yet, racists used to like going to race riots, which were basically like artisanal farmers' fairs for racists, which I thought was funny. The royal benefits scrounger is a great distraction for the public. Yes, that's a good point. That's a good point, Cameron. Which is why I chose not to talk about it, because it is a distraction and it takes away from what's the real important shit that's going on in the world. And a baby is a baby, like regardless of like, it's like I'm happy for the parents, William and Kate, and good luck to them, and hope the baby has a good life, which it probably will. It will probably have a lovely privileged lifestyle, just like the rest of them. But yeah, it's not really an important news story for me. Yeah, so with that, I think I've exhausted all of my talking points. So I'll probably wrap up in a couple of minutes because I've gone on for about an hour and a half ish, nearly 2 hours. So yeah, oh, Cam says, what do you think about Dankula getting fined £800 for the Nazi panic video? I think I think it is a bit ridiculous, to be honest. I think it's political correct. In this case, it really is political correctness gone mad. Um, like it was just a joke. It was just a freaking joke, and like seriously, your dog teaching your dog to do a Nazi salute. Um, I mean, like I guess people's sense of humor is can vary from person to person, but it really stop like wasting your time sending someone to court over teaching their dog a bloody Nazi salute. There are better things to do with people's taxpayers' money. Um, so that's what I think. It is just a massive waste of time. Um, G Whistler, thanks for joining the chat. I was literally about to. I was gonna wrap up in a few minutes' time, as I've been on for quite a while already. But if there's any other topics that you want me to cover, then I will do. I've talked about Jeremy Corbyn and the whole anti-Semitism row that's still going on. Yeah, I know. It's such a shame, isn't it? Restricted user mode. It makes our law system look like even more of a joke. I don't like the EU because of how they treat the Greek people and the EU army. Excuse me. Yeah, I mean I mentioned that a few times in some streams that there is stuff wrong with the EU and the way that it treats certain countries, which is not great. But as you were saying, Adam, it's the devil that you know, isn't it? At the end of the day, which is why I voted Remain. I would much rather be part of a sort of more liberal collective than a right wing government that treats its citizens like dirt. So yeah, that's my opinion. I suppose if JJ is streaming now, then I probably shouldn't be streaming at the same time. So I think now is a good time to wrap the stream up. So I'm sorry to people that have just literally just joined the chat. I have been here for quite a while. But you're more than welcome to comment and watch this video back another time if you should choose. But yeah, thank you all for joining me. It's been a pleasure having you and hosting you today. As always, comment this video and subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. I usually post videos at least once or twice a fortnight on various issues. As I know that Swiss is taking a bit of a sabbatical for a bit, so I'll try and post videos a bit more. If you want to follow me on Twitter, my handle is @Rowmids. That's ROWMIDS. So yeah, thanks a bunch, guys, for joining me this afternoon. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you when I see you. Bye.